right, I want to thank everybody very greatly for taking the time to tune into this live stream update. Whether you're with me live or you are watching after, this breakdown is on the way, and it is going to be covering the significant storms and the latest data that I have on them, as we're going to be seeing significant impacts in especially those yellow and orange shaded zones in the thumbnail there on the left side of your screen. Multiple rounds. We have one coming throughout the next few days that's going to be impacting parts of the plains as we go through tonight. We're going to see some of those impacts get closer to the Mississippi and Ohio valleys as we go through Sunday and Sunday night. And then by the time we get towards Monday and Monday night, we're going to be seeing those storms getting even closer to the Gulf and East Coast regions of the U.S. As if that's not enough, we have another storm system on the way as we go towards the middle of the upcoming week. That's going to produce major impacts from possibly significant severe weather, including tornadoes, to even some flooding concerns that will be on the rise more than what we'll see with this storm. Again, that's going to be closer towards Tuesday, Wednesday, and beyond. I'll probably cover that more in future live updates or videos, stuff of that nature. I will briefly discuss it probably in this stream as well, but I do want to mainly focus on the near-term severe weather outbreak, as of course that is more pressing. And we're going to go ahead and jump right on over, quickly do an overview. I'll break down all of the latest details you need to know day by day for these severe weather threats on the way, and then I'll get into question answering for those of you who are on here live. If you are tuning in after, once I get through this breakdown, if you have any questions, drop those down in the regular comments/questions section, whatever you want to call it, down there here on YouTube below. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're giving you a look at the latest high-resolution future radar from the European model, indicating a mess going on across a lot of the country by the time we go into the overnight hours of our Saturday night and into the early morning time frame of our Sunday. General showers and storms over here from the Ohio Valley back down towards the lower Mississippi Valley and Mid-South. None of this is expected to be severe, but where we could see severe storms as we go through this evening and then into the nighttime hours of tonight, that's going to be back over here into some parts of the central and south central plains. Texas, into Oklahoma, Kansas, parts of Iowa, Missouri, and Arkansas. I've been talking about it in the last couple of videos. It's your time to shine for tonight, and then we're going to see things clear out as storms will be moving east of you into tomorrow. By the way, I don't want to ignore the fact, although I'm not going to be talking about it much in this particular update, we are going to be watching a lot of our freezing rain and snow side of this storm, because it is technically a winter storm. That is going to be ongoing as you come on up here through parts of Minnesota, into Wisconsin, over through parts of the Great Lakes, and then as you get into the interior northeast region as well. So you can really see that we are going to see some significant winter weather impacts out of this system as well. But I digress from that. Looking back down towards the south and west, you can really see where we're set to see that severe weather outbreak. If you don't know yet, or someone in your family doesn't know yet, please be sharing this information out. A significant severe weather outbreak expected from Michigan, back down through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, parts of Missouri, Arkansas, southeast Oklahoma, Texas, eventually stretching into Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky, some of these surrounding spots, even into Alabama at some point as we go through either this time frame on our Sunday evening, and then eventually storms will transition down to the southeast into more of those zones that I just listed off. By the time we go out of Sunday night into Monday, storms getting closer to the Appalachians, down towards the Gulf Coast. Then we'll see new development of storms, and I'm going to time this all out with high-resolution models here in just a minute, as impacts are set to get closer to the east coast of the U.S. by the time we get towards around our Monday. I want to start with a breakdown of tonight's severe weather, our Saturday night at the time frame that I'm doing the stream. And then I'm going to quickly jump out of that and go on over into our Sunday outbreak that is looking more and more likely. Here we go, though, transitioning back on over. This is my custom ONW severe weather scale, giving you a look from level 0 to level 7 at the current forecast for severe weather as we get closer to our March 29th, which is today and tonight, and then including our early Sunday morning as well, where my forecast hasn't changed very much. It is looking like isolated to scattered 60+ mile per hour wind gusts can be expected. Scattered large hail is going to be likely, with many cases of that large hail, possibly even including some hail that could be in upwards of 1.5 inches in diameter. We could even see a few tornadoes possible, particularly there in Oklahoma, Kansas, maybe trying to transition over into Missouri. But if you live in any of the dark green or yellow shaded areas on screen, you need to be remaining weather aware for the severe weather that we are set to see into tonight. Again, our March 29th into the early part of our March 30th. I'm going to go ahead and jump on over now to Radar Omega to give you a brief look about the ingredients in previous videos. It really looks like these cells are going to be developing after dark tonight, especially as we're going to see the possibility for a couple of those more ferocious clusters to be ongoing. By the time we get towards around 10, 11, 12 in the evening, I think that's when things are really going to begin ramping up. Could we see storms initiate before that time frame? Yes. Better chance for the stronger storms by this point in time, as you can see. There's your one level 3 of 7 zone. The first one that I just showed on screen there from Oklahoma up into Kansas and the western part of Missouri. This is where damaging winds, especially that large to very large hail, and even the threat for a few tornadoes to get in the mix could especially come in as these storms initiate, even through around the middle of the nighttime. And then as you can see down here into parts of north central Texas, between around Abilene and Dallas, surrounding zones, we'll be watching that threat for some hail and wind that could come out of these storms as well. And even Dallas, you might want to be moving your cars under a carport or a garage if you have access to that in a place like Dallas as we go into tonight, as those impacts are anticipated to impact places like Plano, back down to Cleburne. Sometime as we get just past midnight or thereafter. You'll probably watch that lightning come in from the west if you have a window facing that direction. You can also see on up here, we'll be watching storms going strong out of Oklahoma into Kansas, pushing into Missouri as we go through the overnight hours. And any of these storms, I think, will especially transition away from the tornado threat. Could we still see tornadoes overnight? Yes. But I think we're going to be looking more at that damaging wind and hail threat persisting as these storms get through Tulsa, east of Wichita, getting closer to Kansas City, Missouri, back down to Joplin points in between. This is where damaging winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour and at least some isolated to scattered large hail looks to continue to be a threat. Even that those threats could continue as we get here into central Missouri before I think we start to see those storms fall apart. And we're going to see how much of any of this morning activity we see in the Ohio Valley and Mississippi Valley tries to hinder the later day severe weather and tornado threat. I'll talk a little bit more about some of those possible ingredients that we'll have here in just a minute, but let's start by looking at the latest risk graphic for the severe weather forecast for our Sunday and Sunday night now. Here is a look for the latest data on that, and this is up to a level 5 of 7 on my ONW severe scale. I have pretty high confidence, not necessarily in a full-fledged tornado outbreak, but at least a severe weather outbreak at the minimum from places like Ohio and Michigan in particular, where we're at least at a level 3 to level 4 of 7 for severe weather in a lot of those zones, all the way back down to the lower Mississippi Valley. Now, the timelines on these storms look pretty interesting. I think we'll start to see storms develop through the western parts of the yellow and orange shaded areas as we go through the afternoon and evening, but some storms as they move further east, especially I'm talking to you in places like Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, central Kentucky, over into parts of Ohio, some of the storms that hit you might actually hit during the night time frame, and that could be when we continue to watch dangerous nocturnal damaging winds and maybe even any tornadoes that move through to be even more concerning than they would be during the day, just because of the fact that it would be harder to be more alert when you're asleep, and you might not be getting those notifications unless you have them turned on your phone. So make sure that you have a way to receive alerts. Make sure emergency alerts are turned on. 100% sure of that in these zones as we go into the nighttime as well for Sunday and Sunday night, due to the possibility of a severe weather outbreak. This is expansive, everyone, from Texas to Michigan, points in between. We've got millions of people under the gun for a potential dangerous event, where scattered damaging winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour are going to be expected out of any lines, as well as more discrete storms we see over this broad area. Isolated gusts in the storms that become more linear, and especially in that faster fashion as we go into the evening and overnight, pushing east through especially that orange zone there as you come out of the Mississippi Valley and then into points east of there. We could see some isolated gusts of up to 80 miles per hour, I think, in some of those stronger storms. The same will go with hail. Not only are we anticipating scattered to widespread large hail out of a lot of the storms that we see on our Sunday, March 30th, as well as Sunday night, some of the hailstones that we see in those stronger storms could exceed 2 inches in diameter. That's a big concern. Again, if you have a carport or a garage, no reason not to get your vehicle under there as we go into this type of setup. Of course, we will also have the potential for tornadoes being likely anywhere from Michigan all the way back down to Texas and Louisiana. I think the peak of that threat is going to be as you come out of Arkansas, Mississippi, and then stretch on up there closer to around the Ohio Valley corridor there along the border of Indiana and Kentucky. Let's talk a little bit more in detail now, going over to my WeatherBell maps, by the way. I normally include free trial links to WeatherBell down in the descriptions of my videos and live streams. If there is not one in this one, I'll make sure to link it in after the stream. But let's go ahead and jump right into the ingredients that we're going to be looking at in terms of the severe weather setup. As we go into the later part of our Sunday, the jet stream is going to be cooking up and bringing in a lot of moisture here, moving through the Mississippi Valley and getting on up into the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. I've been talking about it for the last couple videos. You can see it right here on screen. A very nice trough or a dig in the jet stream, pulling up moisture anywhere from the southwest U.S. and then curling all the way up to the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. Anywhere along and ahead of pieces of energy like this is where you tend to get the best chance for severe weather, and that's why we're going going to have such a broad region with that risk as we go into Sunday and Sunday night, because the area ahead of this energy is very broad. I will say, though, again, you can kind of see that stronger piece of energy there working out of Oklahoma and Arkansas and Missouri, getting on up closer to the Ohio Valley as we go deeper through the day Sunday. It's right on the leading edge of that where we're going to have that best chance for severe weather. That's why a lot of these zones that I'm circling have that level 4 to level 5 on my ONW severe scale. We're getting near outbreak criteria, at least severe weather outbreak, maybe even tornado outbreak criteria with this type of setup. In terms of the winds closer down to the surface, this is your low-level jet stream. Any winds that we see in this part of the jet stream are coming more due south to north as opposed to southwest to northeast. So that jet stream graphic I was showing just a minute ago, winds moving southwest to northeast, these winds a little bit more south to north, and that creates wind shear, or rotating of winds with height up in the atmosphere, and the stronger these low-level winds are, the more of that shear you're going to see. And you can definitely note that those low-level winds are going to be a bit stronger here, again, in a lot of the zones that have that level 4 to level 5. Just because you have strong low-level winds doesn't mean you're going to have a tornado threat. You have to see storms moving into that. You have to see that stronger jet stream energy higher up in the atmosphere, as I was just indicating. But a lot of that's overlapping, as you may be noting by this point in time, again, kind of right in this general vicinity. And that's why hail, damaging winds, and even some more discrete storms that could form producing tornadoes are all going to be hazards, it looks like, as we go deeper through the day Sunday. And in terms of the tornado ingredient, this is the NAM model giving you a look at a 0 to 10 scale, showing the level of intensity of possible tornadoes, or the significant tornado parameter. That's what this graphic is called. Really just indicating the fuel for tornadoes specifically as a result of some of those ingredients I just showed you, as well as some others. And you can see, again, it's really hitting that nail on the head where that line of storms is going to begin moving in. It will be heading into an environment with at least 3s, 4s, 5s, indicating at least that moderate chance for tornadoes, some of which could even be on the stronger side here. So you really want to be paying attention to this threat if you live into the Ohio Valley, the Mississippi Valley, and surrounding spots, anywhere from Michigan, again, all the way back down to Texas, where hail could be especially a big hazard. Watching out for you. Let's go ahead and jump into the timing for the Sunday severe weather side of things now. As we're going to note, at sometimes through the day here, through around the late morning heading into the early afternoon, we're probably going to be watching showers and storms isolated in nature anywhere from Missouri through Illinois, through Indiana, over here to Ohio and Kentucky, and in points in between. Of course, winter weather will be ongoing up here where you see these colors turning from greens to yellows further on up to the north and the upper Midwest. Talked about the snow and ice forecast totals in my last video if you want to check that out. That is under the videos tab of my channel if you want to watch that later. But anyway, back down here to the severe weather side of things. Any of this morning activity, the more of it we see, especially given the fact that it is expected to be on the general end weaker in nature, the more of it we see, the better that's going to be for late day storm development having a harder time of getting itself together. But as of right now, it doesn't look like we're going to see enough early day storms to really hinder the late day activity. And I think based on this guidance anyway, as early as around 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, especially places like Missouri into Illinois will be under the gun for some strong to severe storms. That includes St. Louis, Missouri, up into Springfield, Illinois, points in between. While the tornado threat might not be peaking by this point in time, especially hail, damaging winds, and at least an isolated tornado threat may be realized as these storms move on through, and especially those that are more discrete in nature back down there closer to the boot heel of Missouri, those could have that potential to rotate and produce some tornadoes. So as early as around midday, heading into the early to mid part of the afternoon, be on high alert for those storms here into places like Missouri and Illinois if this does end up playing out like so. Keep in mind, this is just a model. It's not going to be perfect. Gives you a general idea, though, and this HRRR is normally pretty spot on in terms of the general idea of how storms are going to time out. What about as we go deeper through the afternoon and evening? By the time we go towards 3, 4, 5 o'clock, likely watching a significant episode of severe weather really beginning by this time. I think damaging winds and hail continue to be the highest threats, widespread to, or at least scattered to 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. That large hail possible anywhere from southern Missouri all the way on up to northern Indiana by this point in time. Remember, pretty much all of these zones that I have circled in the white on screen right now are in at least a level 3, in many cases a level 4 of 7 on my ONW severe scale as a result of these storms, so you need to be taking them seriously. We could also see a few storms that are rotating within these lines, or even a little bit more isolated on their own in nature, and that could be where we see what's called supercells rotating, and those storms would have the better chance for even stronger tornadoes. Look at this, all the way up into Michigan, damaging winds, hail, maybe a tornado or two possible sometime as we go through the late afternoon into the evening with these storms moving through. The same will go as you come through a lot of northern and central parts of Indiana, back down here closer to the Mississippi River, in a zone that was recently hit very hard by several EF2, EF3 caliber tornadoes. We even saw Northeast Arkansas get that EF4, of course, or a couple of them, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, from that outbreak a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, you're going to be maybe getting some storm PTSD as these move on through. Again, just, be prepared. No need to panic, but you need to be looking at these very closely on this model right now because it looks very concerning for southeast Missouri, southern Illinois for especially damaging hail and gusty winds. But we could definitely see some of these storms, as you notice, being a little bit more supercell-like in nature, being a little bit more isolated and down towards the southern end of the line. Where they're able to tap into the energy even more and be a little bit more broken. We could even see that similar setup going all the way on up here to the Ohio Valley. So again, that's why I'm expecting this general corridor to be the highest tornado threat that we see out of this entire event as we go, especially through the evening of Sunday. What about as we go deeper through the evening and then into the night? Storms at least possibly severe through Detroit as we go sometime through the evening. Same will go as you come from Cleveland and back down to Columbus there in Ohio. I don't think it's going to be necessarily widespread severe weather by the time we're getting through central and eastern Ohio, but any storms we do see there, especially damaging winds and hail being a threat at the minimum. I never want to rule out tornadoes either. And all the way back down here to Texas by this point in time, the really broad end of the severe weather event and the spectrum of these severe storms will be noted. I think from Detroit, Michigan, all the way back down to Dallas, Texas, between this D city and this D city, we have a ton of severe storms likely in generally line segment fashion. Again, that's why I think this is a severe weather outbreak with mostly damaging winds and hail. But if we see more of these supercell type storms that you can at least see some indications of there in a place like Kentucky through the evening, we definitely continue to see the tornado threat go even more elevated. I want you to be prepared in case these strong tornadoes do turn out to be the main threat here as you come out of the Mississippi Valley and closer towards places like Kentucky and Tennessee. I think storms are definitely more of a damaging wind and hail threat with just some isolated tornadoes continuing as we go through central Kentucky from Louisville and Richmond, Kentucky, back down to Bowling Green, all the way back down here to Louisiana and points in between towards the middle of the night here. This is again Sunday night. Now we're looking at early Monday morning. Nashville, you could get some gnarly overnight storms with especially damaging winds, heavy rain, lots of lightning being threats. By the way, quick interruption, make sure you're hitting the like button on this live update. All right, back into it though. You can see from West Virginia back over to Louisiana, Mississippi, points in between, looking at storms into the overnight. I think our best chance for tornadoes overnight is going to start to come here closer to some of these Gulf Coast states after transitioning out of places like Kentucky and Tennessee. And that's where we could continue to watch storms as we go into the day on Monday, and eventually these are going to transition eastward. That leads me now into the forecast for Monday's storms. Then I'll begin to talk a little bit about the severe weather setup for the midweek time frame into the upcoming week. Then I'll begin to answer questions. So hang tight, folks. Going to get right into it for those of you who are especially on here with me live. If you're watching this after, again, I can't stress enough, drop any comments, questions you have down below in the regular comments section. Here we go, though. Let's pivot back on over to my custom graphics. And this is my ONW severe scale and where I am anticipating to put down a level 3 of 7 for severe weather. Again, this is for at least scattered damaging winds, some isolated large hail, and possible tornadoes up and down the East Coast, exiting the Appalachians, and also getting into parts of the rest of the lower parts of the Gulf Coast states, into the Florida Panhandle, surrounding zones. You name it, another broad day for severe weather just shifting east. And this is for the Monday and Monday night time frame, as storms from the morning could continue to be severe as they get closer to the Gulf Coast and into places like the Carolinas while exiting Tennessee. We could also see new development up into some zones that might go a little bit more untapped and have more instability as a result up into the mid-Atlantic. I don't want to talk too much on this threat because the details are a little bit uncertain as to how many of the storms from the night before will lead into the next threat, or how discrete some of these storms will actually be. But what I do want to show you here is what I think is another good depiction by the NAM model at the best chance for severe weather and where it may be using the significant tornado parameter, really just showing where the ingredients for tornadoes will be lining up the most. You can see here that as you push through parts of the Appalachians and then begin shifting east out of there, it looks like we'll begin to see tornado energy decreasing overnight, Sunday night into Monday, but then we see it come back again, at least ones and twos. That's not a zero tornado threat on a scale of 0 to 10 that this guidance is showing. And really, we're seeing widespread 1s, 2s, and 3s anywhere from the Mississippi and Alabama coast, curling all the way up through Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, up to the Mid-Atlantic by the time we go into Monday afternoon. And even if we see some early day storms that are weaker or left over from the night before and aren't necessarily significant in some of these zones, redevelopment could be a big concern as we go into the afternoon. And you definitely want to be taking any warnings and watches seriously as we go into Monday and Monday night as well, getting closer to the East and Gulf Coast as a result of this particular severe weather event. Now, I do want to briefly touch on the severe weather that we could see as we go deeper into next week real quick, and then we'll start answering some questions here live on this stream. Once we get beyond this event, so as we're going through Tuesday, everybody's hoping for a break. We don't want an April Fool's joke with another deja vu severe weather event, but unfortunately, look at this. We're going to start to see a kick up in the plains first, Tuesday night heading into the early part of Wednesday. I think places like Nebraska, Kansas, maybe all the way back down to Oklahoma and Texas in isolated fashion again, watching the possibility for some severe storms with hail being one of the main threats out of these initial rounds. And then from there, a possible significant tornado outbreak over some of the exact same areas set to see the tornado outbreak tomorrow on Sunday. This looks like a deja vu system. Winter weather up here on the states that border Canada. Strong, broad cold front with a huge warm sector leading to severe weather from Michigan back down to Texas. I'm telling you, this isn't a joke. Look at the timestamp on the top left side of your screen. We could do it all over again for a lot of the same zones into Wednesday, only this looks to also be a significant flood threat as we'll see some of these storms possibly slow down. The next round of storms could move through sometime around Thursday into Friday. Even more systems possible after that, and while we might not necessarily see severe weather widespread once we get past April 1st, April 2nd, and April 3rd, we'll definitely have a flooding threat probably developing and becoming more and more major over places like the Mississippi Valley. That's certainly something you want to be keeping a very close eye on in those particular zones. But with that being said, I want to go ahead and begin answering some questions that we have here live on the stream. If you're watching this after, again, you can drop your comments and questions below in the comments section of this update. Also, some of these questions that I have on here live might help you if you're watching after, so let's see what we've got here. I'm just going to start with this one right here asking about Chicago, and we're going to go ahead and jump into the forecast for Chicago, Illinois. First of all, the risk level for a place like Chicago, Illinois looks like so, where we have as high as around a level 3 of 7 on my ONW severe scale, but the level 4 of 7 not far away. Again, that is for the Sunday and Sunday night time frame, our March 30th. I'd say damaging winds, some scattered large hail, and maybe an isolated tornado would be the main threats up there towards Chicago. I think that biggest tornado threat really does look to be down to your south and east. Thankfully, though, unfortunately, that puts other people in the line of fire, so if you have any questions from other zones, please be dropping those down below. Let's go ahead and jump on back on into the timing graphic here, and here we are looking at the latest future radar from the HRRR model. Overall, it looks like you could see some general showers at some points throughout the morning into the midday time frame of our Sunday, but any storms you do have the chance of seeing in Chicago, while this model, isn't indicating a heavy storm moving through Chicago, that's very close to you, and again, these models aren't perfect. So I'd be ready as we go through, especially the mid to late afternoon, but I think things would quickly clear up in a place like Chicago, and arguably we might even see some snow flurries moving in as we go deeper through the evening and then into the overnight of Sunday night and Monday morning. So be on the lookout for an isolated severe storm or two. If we do get anything, damaging winds and hail look to be the main threats at some point here, mid-late afternoon time frame-ish on our Sunday. Other than that, the worst storms do look to be to your south and east in Chicago, thankfully. Will Northeast Ohio have significant damaging winds, says Severe Storm Filmer. Same thing as Chicago. You are in a level 3 of 7 for severe weather. Puts you out of the main tornado risk, but puts you in what you love the most, Severe Storm Filmer, based on your usual comments, trying to film the damaging winds. And I can tell you, it looks like a pretty feisty line is going to be moving in from your west as we go sometime into tomorrow evening, from Columbus to Mount Vernon up to Mansfield and Norwalk there in Ohio, some places you may be familiar with, even if you're not Severe Storm Filmer. Watching a significant line likely moving in. I don't see much of a discrete nature in this line unless something changes. So while a tornado threat would not be zero, this looks like especially a 60-mile-per-hour wind type of setup for at least some scattered spots. We'll definitely have the potential for some spots of hail along this line as well. And it looks like the main time frame for that line is going to be sometime as we go through the evening and then around into the middle of the night time frame before things really calm down overnight. Could we see storm redevelopment there or just east of you as we see that cold front shifting east into our Monday? Yes, but again, it's mainly going to be that Sunday evening threat that I'd watch out for the most. But yes, some significant damaging winds could definitely be a threat there in northeastern Ohio. Dr. Tony Strange says, what's your opinion about Hardin County, Tennessee? I can go ahead and type that right on in here to my search, Hardin County, Tennessee. Let's go ahead and take a look at that vicinity. All right, down there in the southwestern corner of Tennessee, you're looking at probably more of a late night threat as we go into tomorrow based on current guidance. However, that late night threat, as I'll show again, you've probably seen this as well because I saw your comment before the beginning of the live stream. You've probably been on here for a while. But looking at southwest Tennessee, you are in that level 4 of 7 as of now. That indicates a pretty significant severe weather event looking pretty possible, if not likely there, as we go through the late part of Sunday into Sunday night. giving you a look back at the future radar. Again, I think it's going to be mostly a nighttime event there as you get into Hardin County, and these storms are anticipated to be quite on that strong side. I don't think the tornado threat's going to be quite as strong as it will be just to your north and west. We're going to see the sun be down. That definitely helps to begin with in kind of decreasing some of the instability over zones. However, the tornado threat still looks to be on the isolated to scattered end for at least EF0, EF1, EF2 type tornadoes. And any tornado or damaging wind event needs to be taken seriously, so you need to be on the lookout as around, especially once the sun goes down and thereafter, I want you prepared. I think it would especially be the middle of the night into the overnight hours, though, where a place like Hardin County, Tennessee, feels the heaviest effect there in the southwestern corner of the state from these severe storms. Heavy rain could move on through, and that could at least cause an isolated flooding threat in those zones as well. For the Indianapolis area, is this comment saying, this comment saying, is Wednesday a triple threat, and what should I expect tomorrow? It's a little early to be calling, whether we're going to have all severe weather hazards on Wednesday in a place like Indianapolis. Just assume that we will have at least the threat for tornadoes. If you're prepared for tornadoes, you're prepared for really any sort of severe weather. And, of course, be preparing for hail and wind as well. Be on the lookout for what could happen Wednesday, but let's go ahead and time out what could happen for you as we go into tomorrow, because, of course, Indianapolis is in a level 4 of 7 on my ONW severe scale. As you come on up there through central Indiana, the general consensus is that storms are going to be quite on the feisty side. If there's any good news, it looks like especially the worst of these storms, based on current guidance anyway, would come through during a time where you should be awake as we go through the middle of the afternoon into the evening, unless you work the night shift or something and you are asleep during this time. Anyway, be prepared to be awake as a result of thunder at the very minimum here through central Indiana. It looks like Indiana's really going to see that time frame late afternoon into the evening, and then storms will begin winding down and exiting the state as we go beyond around 9, 10, 11 p.m. In a place like Indianapolis, I don't want to give you an exact time, but damaging winds, some hail, and maybe even a few discrete cells because you're close to the Ohio Valley could move on through. And that could mean that you also see that elevated threat for the possibility of a strong tornado, so you need to be on the lookout for that there. Especially damaging winds and hail, though, being the main threats there in Indianapolis in the level 4 of 7 zone. Again, I think this Sunday and Sunday night event is at least a severe weather outbreak. I'm very confident in damaging winds and hail over a large area. I'm not as confident in widespread tornado event, but you need to be prepared in case that happens, because that is the worst case scenario, and that would especially be from Indianapolis and points back down to the south and west, at least through the kind of boot heel there of Missouri and into some parts of Arkansas, points in between. Let's see, this comment, this says, I am ready for some daytime severe storms. Seems like so far in 2025, the bad weather rolls through northern Alabama around 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next day. Yeah, I mean, if you're a severe storm observer, it's always easier to see these storms during the day and get good videos of them. If you're just someone who, of course, is worried about the storms, it's even worse when they're coming in a nocturnal type of threat, and that's exactly what we're going to be seeing here. I think northern Alabama is looking at a mainly damaging wind and hail event. Damaging winds are mainly the threats that we tend to see out of these overnight storms, but we could even be watching at least a few tornadoes as this mass of rain and wind and lightning moves in. And yeah, it would probably be moving through close to sunrise and maybe even still pouring rain at least through mid-morning, based on this guidance there in a place like northern Alabama, that again going out of Sunday night into Monday morning, where I have you around a level 3 of 7 in a lot of northern Alabama. And I have you in that 3 of 7 for both March 30th and March 31st, because technically it could come in during the early part of the day Sunday before the March 30th period ends on Storm Prediction Center in my scales. And then they could still be lingering around enough to where we see severe weather into the day on Monday. But overall, it's a late night Sunday night into Monday threat, and that's why you're in that level 3 of 7. Better than being off to the northwest, where we'll have all that daytime instability fueled up just in time for storms to fire around and after dusk there closer to the Mississippi Valley. Let's see what we have here. What is Martin, Tennessee going to experience? I apologize if I'm slow getting around to all your comments and questions. By the way, of course, donations through the Super Chat button are always appreciated. You can also become a member of the channel by clicking the link in the pinned comment. But let's go ahead and jump on over to this. Martin, Tennessee, what is Martin going to experience? As we jump over into that region, it is looking like the northwestern part of Tennessee is under the gun. I have you in the level 5 of 7. I'll just show that again here for anybody who may just be joining this live stream as well. A level 5 of 7 on my ONW severe scale for northwestern Tennessee. This looks like a very significant event. Damaging winds, hail, and possibly even any discrete storms, possibly producing very strong tornadoes even being a risk there. if there's any spot that has the risk for a lot of the hazards to overlap, it's going to be there in northwest Tennessee near that red zone. So you want to be on very high alert as we go through the day, March 30th into the nighttime. Jumping back on over here to the timing for the Sunday and Sunday night storms. Overall, right now, indications would be that we'd see some of those heaviest storms in a place like Martin County. Just after dusk would be when I'd especially start to be concerned, sometime around 5, 6, 7, and thereafter. So as the sun's going down, your alertness needs to be going up for these particular cells. And then from there, we could continue to watch at least a damaging wind and tornado threat in that zone through around the middle of the night, based on this current guidance anyway, and then things would be shifting off to your southeast. Be prepared anywhere, I'd say, from around 7 p.m. Central to, let's say, 2 a.m. Central, based on this right now. Let's see what else we have here. Hello from Inglewood, Ohio. Hello to you. If you have any comments and questions, let me know about those. But hello. Thank you, everybody who is tuning into this stream again. Hitting the like button and hitting the subscribe button, those are greatly appreciated ways to support this channel. If you do want to donate or hit that membership button to join and get perks from this channel, like prioritize comment reply, you can also do that below. Do I think there could be an EF5 tornado tomorrow? Girl Dove says, well, let's not panic about EF5 tornadoes, even if that were a risk. Best thing to do is just to be vigilant and not be panicking. But one thing I will say is, again, given the very linear nature of all these storms, even when we see outbreaks of discrete supercells, it's very hard to see an EF5. So, there's never a 0% chance, but I would not be worried about that intense of a tornado, especially in your usual area that you comment from Terre Haute, Indiana. No need to panic about storms. If there is a strong tornado, best thing to do is just be ready to receive those alerts. And good news for you is that you do expect these storms in a place like Terre Haute, where you normally comment from. That is going to be as we go through the evening before the sun goes down, based on this current guidance. And that would also help in you being more vigilant about the storm cells. Greenwood, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis. Christine B. says, again, thank you to everybody for your patience. If there are any super chat related comments and questions that come in with the donations, then I will get to those faster. But thank you to everybody else for your patience. Let's see what we have here. Greenwood, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis. Yeah, I was just kind of talking about the southwestern part of Indiana. They're in a place like Indianapolis. You are in the level 4 of 7 on my ONW severe scale for severe weather as we go into the Sunday and Sunday night time frame. Storm timing currently as of now looks to be for damaging winds, hail, and maybe a few tornadoes, and 1 or 2 of which could be on that stronger side moving through if we get especially the discrete cells. It looks like the timing there for south central and central parts of Indiana is going to be as we go beyond around 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. Yeah, let's say around 3, 4 for the start, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the worst storm should be moving on off to your east just as the sun finishes going down there in a place like Greenwood, Indiana. Oh yeah, I already answered your question, and you're just providing additional details, Metallica. Appreciate your comment, or your question, I should say, and for your consistent support on my videos. You've got a siren at the top of your street. Well, then you should be very alert there, Tony. You're very welcome, Capybara. Let's see what else we've got. Will there be a low risk of tornadoes for the Northeast on Monday? I certainly think we could see that type of threat develop, especially the NAM model. Again, I'll jump back to this in case you missed it here at the start of the stream. Let's jump on over to this graphic here, or this side of the presentation. There we go. NAM model is certainly indicating a broad area of low-end tornado potential. This graphic really does the dirty work and compiles a lot of these tornado ingredients together so that you can see it all in one graphic. And it's really indicating that highest tornado potential is not very high as of now anyway, but it looks like a broad-end, lower-end severe weather event, broad-end, lower-end tornado event, as well as a possibility for a lot more scattered damaging winds and hail should be up and down the east and Gulf Coast as we go through the day Monday. We might see a greater threat for tornadoes or damaging winds or hail get realized as we get closer, though. So I'll be keeping you updated on that. But right now, it at least looks like a broad low-end tornado threat will exist anywhere from the Gulf Coast up the East Coast, with especially those storms that refire on up or are connected to the original line through the day Monday into Monday night. Ed says, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. I'm going to time you out of the chat. Let's see what else we have. D. Davis says, thanks again. I appreciate you very much for taking the time to tune into this live stream. We have Bob, and he says, is this going to be in Saginaw, Michigan? For impacts in a place like Michigan, we're looking at a level 2, level 3, or level 4 over a lot of the state. Here's a look at the overview here on my ONW severe scale. There it is on screen. Again, level 2 for the northern part of the state, level 3 through a lot of the central part of the glove, and then a level 4 down there on the southern border of Michigan there with Indiana and Ohio. Storm timing in Michigan looks to be possibly through the early afternoon for some of these initial storms. You can see them up there. I don't think these look too particularly intense necessarily, but we could see an isolated damaging wind or tornado possibility out of those. Better chance, I think, comes in from the southwest to the northeast, though, for these damaging winds in particular, and maybe some other isolated threats as we go through around mid to late evening. In a place like Saginaw in particular, it looks like these storms would move in close to sundown. Use that as a general time frame. Close to sundown. You're very welcome, Christine. Let's see, we've got Esther, and she is asking about Murfreesboro. I feel like I've said it before in a live stream and I've mispronounced it. They're in the central part of Tennessee. Ignore those other pins to the west. Those are from previous pins that I put down answering questions. But you can see they're in the central part of Tennessee, that we have the potential of severe weather. Of course, it is a level 3 to level 4 in my ONW severe scale, and a lot of your storms look to be an overnight, Sunday night into early Monday morning threat. And again, I feel like in terms of danger, a level 3 in the late night can be even worse than a level 5 during the day, just because some people might be unaware. There's always that chance that, you forgot to turn on the emergency alerts on your phone or something like that, or something doesn't go off. That's probably not a big risk, but you always just want to be prepared. Make sure you have all those precautions in place due to these overnight storm, and the overnight nature of these storms. It doesn't look like a significant tornado threat by the time we're getting past Nashville into a place like Murfreesboro, but at least isolated tornadoes, a couple of which could be on the strong side if we see more discrete of nature of storms. Better chance, though, again, is going to be for the damaging winds and hail. That's going to be the main theme out of this entire event. Let's see. What do I think about Kansas City for tonight? Great question. This is for the Saturday night and into early Sunday type threat that we're seeing literally as we go within the next 12 hours here of this stream finishing up on our Saturday evening. Here's my ONW severe skill for that near-term time frame in case you haven't seen it. Kansas City, Missouri is under the gun with a level 3 of 7 for some severe weather, especially on the southern suburbs of town. And if we jump back on over here now to Radar Omega to give you a look at the timing for the near-term storms, I think it's going to be around the middle of the night and thereafter tonight when we see the worst activity pushing in. Again, it's going to be on your southern suburbs where that level 3 is in place due to these storms looking like they'll be bowing in nature. You see that right there. I mean, the storms tonight pretty feisty in their own right. That backward C shape right there indicates that damaging winds. Those damaging winds really pushing out of the storm and pushing east at a pretty quick rate. And we'll definitely see some possibly scattered to even locally widespread damaging winds there through the southwestern part of Missouri overnight tonight. Glad you brought up Kansas City. Kansas City, very close call for the worst of the storms. Again, I think they'll go just south of you, but at least isolated damaging winds and hail, maybe some stronger gusts, especially being a main concern there. You're welcome, Bob. Eli Hughes says, can I check 45334? Yes, I can type in that zip code, but let me get a swig of water first. I have not taken a drink break, I don't believe, all stream. All right, let's go ahead and get that typed in. Did I type that in right? Oh, there we go. Jackson Center, Ohio. Okay, so overnight tonight, some general showers and storms moving through with kind of a precursor boundary. It's going to be later in the day tomorrow, though, where you get in on that possible severe weather outbreak that's going to cover broad zones from Michigan all the way back down to Texas. It looks like the west central parts of Ohio will be getting storms around and maybe even just after sundown as well, before we see things clearing out by around midnight. And damaging winds, hail, and even the threat for a few tornadoes looks to be the risk. Again, I think that damaging wind and hail threat is going to be what really plagues most zones out of this particular event, though. Again, if you're here with me and you have not already, make sure you're hitting that like button down below. Also, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any forecast videos as well as live streams that I do. You're very welcome, Esther. Let's see. Will Moultrie, Georgia be affected with this storm? Very much so, anywhere from the Central Plains all the way to the East Coast, not really excluding anyone. We're going to see impacts, and they're in a place like Moultrie, Georgia. It is certainly looking like we could see some significant storms, but this is going to be into Monday where we see the threat come to you. Just to show you what I made before this stream, here's a look at the custom ONW severe scale, custom severe weather risk graphics that you find right here only on One Nation Weather's channel, unless someone's, illegally distributing them somewhere else. I'm just kidding. But anyway, you can see here down into the southern part of Georgia, we have a level 3 of 7 for severe weather that I'm anticipating as we go into our Monday and Monday night. So damaging winds, large hail, and maybe even some tornadoes could become a threat. Tornadoes don't look like a major threat for anyone along the East Coast unless something changes right now, but you want to be prepared in case that does become a major threat. Again, the damaging winds and hail look like the primary risks, and timing for storms in Georgia could be really any time from the morning into the afternoon, as we could see some storms left over from the night before, and then some new ones trying to fire on up across that general region. It's a little bit more of a tricky setup as we get east. Confidence is a little lower in the exact timing and setup for storms into Monday, but you definitely want to be on the prepared side there. Let's see what else we have here. What about St. Charles in Missouri? I will get right to that in just a second, but I am going to do a quick transition on over here to get another swig of water. All right, we are jumping right back into it here, and we are ready to go. Thank you to everybody for taking the time to tune in and drop your comments and questions down below. Which one we're going to get to? Oh yeah, St. Charles, Missouri. And yes. Oh, and that is from Genius, Mr. Remy, or Mr. REMYD. I appreciate you for that super chat down below. Sorry for the brief interruption there. 199 super chat, very much. Thank you very much for dropping that down below. Let me go ahead and give you a look at St. Charles, Missouri. As Missouri, a lot of the state is going to be under the gun for some significant severe weather as we push through time. Let's go ahead and get a look there at the eastern part of the state. Oh yeah, around St. Louis, Missouri, you are under a level 4, very close to a level 5 of severe weather on my ONW severe scale. Again, that is going to be for the Sunday and Sunday night time frame there, where we could get the worst storms pushing on in. Expect damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes to be all possible hazards. And let's go ahead and jump on over to give you a look at the possible timing. Again, I say this in general because daytime is better than nighttime. If there's any positive, it's that the storms are going to probably be moving through a place like St. Louis as we go through the afternoon. The bad news of that is that any storms that we do see here could be very discrete in nature, and that could be when we see some of the largest hail out of these storms as they initiate, maybe even that more discrete tornado threat as these cells possibly will be even more isolated than this model is indicating. You want to be prepared, have a severe weather plan in place there, and be ready for these storms. I think we're going to see storms possibly as early as midday, but especially through the early to mid-afternoon there in St. Louis and surrounding zones. And then I think by the late evening, things should be clearing off, although you might see a lot of that lightning on off to your southeast if it's not cloudy overhead. That's something I love to do, especially in the summer. Living in the Carolinas, whenever we get a big severe storm event, I like to look kind of off in the distance once storms get past, if things clear out into the night, and you can see that lightning continuing off in the distance. So that would be something cool that anybody could do there, especially if you're now safe from the storms and they are past you. Unfortunately, though, we could see some very inclement weather continuing down closer to the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys to your south and east there of St. Louis and surrounding zones by the time we go into the middle of the night, Sunday night. I appreciate that super chat, though, once again. The $1.99, all donations are appreciated from anybody. Let's see, can I check the zip code 75006 for tonight? Yes, I very much so can. We're going to answer a few more questions. If we get some super chats, of course, I'll answer those first. And then we will be closing out this stream here in a little bit once we get past the next several questions. There in the northern part of Texas, of course, I do want to mention we could see some storms around or just east of you with what we see Sunday into Sunday night, so be on the lookout for that around especially Sunday evening. But for tonight's storms, there in a place like Dallas and on the northern suburbs, we're looking at a level 2 to level 3 on my ONW severe scale for these isolated storms set to move on in. I don't expect a widespread threat, but definitely some big hail and some isolated damaging winds possible out of wherever these storms exactly go through the evening and into the early part of the overnight tonight. So be on the lookout for that. Again, these storms moving through, what you're seeing on screen is for Saturday night when I'm doing this stream. Literally within the next 4 to 6 hours of this stream occurring, we'll probably be seeing some of these strongest storms moving into a place like Dallas or on the north central suburbs of town. You're very welcome, Genius Mr. Remy, or however you pronounce that profile name. Thanks again for the donation. Samuel Wilkinson says, I think severe weather outbreaks tomorrow, Sunday night, and then Monday at Winsboro, Louisiana, and Vicksburg, Mississippi. I'm just going to type in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and I'm going to give you a look at the timing for when I think severe weather is going to move on in. I'm a little jumbled up by that comment there. Sorry for taking a minute on that. But let's go ahead and get a look closer down here, lower down the Mississippi River Valley. And this will kind of help cover the rolling fork question that I just got there. Yeah, it certainly looks like storms are going to be overnight, Sunday night into Monday morning, and those could be the worst types of storms, you know, if these do move in a nocturnal type mode, although they might actually move in as we start to see light or just before. It's going to be a close call, either very late during the darkest of the night or as the sun's starting to come up around Monday morning is when these storms look to move through a place like Mississippi. All hazards could be possible, but especially damaging winds, hail. We could see some isolated tornadoes, though, and they could be on the strong side, so you want to be prepared for that further down the Mississippi River Valley. With that being said, though, I do not have any further comments and questions. If you do have them, though, drop them down in the comments section below after this live stream ends, and it is literally about to end within the next 30 seconds. Thank you very much for taking the time to tune in, and I'll catch everyone in the next video or stream. Make sure you're subscribing, turning those notifications on, all that fun stuff.